Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2023 sports drama film Ferrari. Now, when this film came out, it didn't really win the race at the box office or with critics. Just kind of came and went at the tail end of 2023. And after sitting down and watching the film, I could definitely see why. I was very underwhelmed by this movie. I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought the film was bad or rant worthy in terms of things that I didn't like about it or didn't work about it, but it definitely didn't completely cross the finish line, so to speak. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on Ferrari, I want to give a special shout out to Phil for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, the film is directed by Michael Mann, and he's a director who's done a lot of films that I like quite a bit: Thief, Manhunter, Collateral, Heat. But lately, he's done some films I've not been that impressed with: Public Enemies, Black Hat, especially Black Hat. So I think he's in the middle of like a downturn. Time will tell whether or not he's gonna get out of it, but this is not peak Michael Mann. His style, his flair, his usage of the camera is still at a pretty high point. So I'll give him that, but there's just some things that are just lacking. Like the signature flair that you see from Michael Mann, the overall usage of pans, zooms, and stuff like that, it's still pretty sound, but it just feels like there are moments throughout this movie where he doesn't necessarily have the same drive. And what's interesting is this is a passion project of his. It's a film that he has honestly been trying to get made for decades, for like 30 years. So you would think that there would be more drive to the direction, more passion, more fuel. And other than the racing scenes, you don't really see that. So maybe it's one of those things where, oh, I finally get to make it, but it's all these years later, and I really wanted to do it earlier, and I wanted to have a different cast, and all these years have passed, and I'm not able to have the cast I want. I'm not able to do the version of this that I really wanted to. So this is gonna have to do. I just want to get this film made because it's something that I've been trying to do for so long, and at least this is an opportunity for me to finish this quest. It almost seems like that kind of thing. Like he just feels like he's obligated to do it at this point. It's something that needs to be done and not necessarily something that he's really, really super passionate about anymore. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you're trying at something for like 30 years, I mean, it's perfectly understandable that your passion for it might wane after all that time. It's not necessarily the same as it was when you first came up with the concept or when you were first passionate about doing the film. So yeah, I would say this is kind of a film from a directorial standpoint that's listless. It's just kind of drifting at points because of the fact that there's really not a lot of passion behind the camera. At least for me personally, especially when it comes to scenes that are just dealing with the Ferrari family drama. Like, there's only so much you can do to make that into something that's interesting visually. Even the racing scenes at points, because of the way that they're shot, can be a little bit too, uh, um, I don't know if self-indulgent is the right word, but they can definitely be a little bit too much in terms of the way that they're shot, and it just makes the scenes kind of drag and not necessarily put you in the driver's seat as well as some of the other racing films out there. But they're still fairly decently shot. It's just I don't necessarily have the same sense of adrenaline watching the racing scenes as I do in something like Days of Thunder or even Rush or even Le Mans. Um, but it's not a poorly directed film by any means. It's just a movie that just seems like Mann doesn't fully have all gears going. Like he's not shifting into full gear with this. He's kind of like at half gear, you know, kind of halfway there throughout the majority of the movie. The screenplay is by Troy Kennedy Martin, and this film took so long when it comes to its development that this screenwriter passed away years before this film was released. And the script is honestly the biggest problem I have with this movie. I know Michael Mann likes to do these kind of films where it's like a slice in the life of a historical figure, or these movies that deal with like the day to day goings on within a certain time period with certain characters. I know that's something that he's a big fan of. And I think there's definitely a time and a place for that kind of storytelling. And I know there's a lot of people who like that kind of storytelling. I'm not really a super big, massive fan of that kind of storytelling. And to me, the script for Ferrari feels like you're watching like the second episode of a miniseries about Enzo Ferrari, and it's just expanded to over 2 hours. It's at points excruciatingly dull and long because of the fact that you have this like 48-minute long story that's stretched out to 2 hours. And so much of the story and the script is devoted to family drama between Ferrari, Enzo Ferrari, and his wife, Laura. And this stuff involving Lena Lardy, who is this woman that Enzo has been cheating on his wife, Laura, with for years, and even has had a kid with. And you have Ferrari's racing team as well. But a lot of it is just the family drama between Enzo and his wife, or stuff involving Enzo and Lena, and his son, Fiero. And it's just one of those movies where I think your mileage will definitely vary when it comes to this script and this story. Like, if you find the family drama compelling, then I think this film might work better for you. If you find it boring, this doesn't work that well. And to me, I think a lot of the family drama is just straight out of a soap opera, typical stuff you've seen a million times. There's nothing about the family drama here that is anything that unique. Oh, this rich guy, he cheated on his wife and she's mad at him, and he wants to be with the other woman and wants to be with his son. The only thing that they throw in there that I guess is at all extra compelling is the stuff involving Enzo's dead son, and the whole frustration that Laura has that she gave him an heir, but the son died because he got sick, and so she's all frustrated about that. And you definitely do get a sense that that was a pretty big loss for Ferrari, and he's reeling from that. And so I know I think the scriptwriter did a good job showing that that's something that definitely has left a hole in his heart. That's why he wears these sunglasses all the time. These dark sunglasses is because it reflects how he feels after the tragic death of his son. And yeah, he has another son, but it's not really the same kind of thing, you know. He will adopt the name Ferrari later on, but he's not going to be given it right away. But the most compelling stuff other than that when it comes to the plot have to do with the cars, have to do with racing, and specifically this race that Ferrari is preparing for. He's preparing his racing team for the Mille Miglia, an open road endurance based race lasting 1,000 miles. And so you have this, but while he's preparing for this race and preparing his racers for this race, he's got all this domestic stuff that he has to deal with at home. Domestic strife that ultimately is veering towards divorce between him and his wife. I mean, the movie even opens up with him sleeping in bed with the other woman, saying goodbye to his other son, and then going home, and then his wife finding out, and then being pissed at him and shooting a gun at him, but missing on purpose because she's trying to prove a point. And there's this whole back and forth between the two of them. His wife Laura eventually finds out that uh he's cheating on her. And the thing is, like, she knows he's been cheating on her for years, but she doesn't necessarily have a problem with that until she finds out who it is, finds out that he had a son with this other woman, and now she's upset. It's kind of like, okay, you were okay with him sleeping around for all of his time, but now because certain things have happened in a certain way, it's no longer acceptable to you and you're pissed off. It kind of reminded me a little bit of what happened in The Sopranos with Tony and Carmela. But yeah, it's one of those things where that whole arc, that whole aspect of the script, it's just very predictable. Other than the bit where his wife Laura cashes the check and effectively bankrupts Ferrari temporarily, so she can give Enzo money so he can fight legal battles and muck ring. I don't know if that's muck rake. That's the kind of word. I don't know what muck ring is. Um, so he can muck rake, with the media or mudsling. Um, because of what happened at the Mille Miglia, because there wound up becoming an accident that cost the lives of the drivers as well as a bunch of innocent people and bystanders. And so now he's being raked over the coals by the media, and Laura gives him this money in order for him to fight a particular battle against the media and win. But you never see that battle unfold, and you never know if he even used the money for anything like that. And so that's really how that whole bit ends with the two of them. It seems like a whole story arc and subplot that could be like 20 minutes, but it's expanded to like 40 minutes of runtime. There are scenes with Enzo and his racing team that aren't too bad, but the racers themselves, they're so interchangeable. Other than the fact that one has white hair and then one wears a leather jacket, or one is British, I think. Other than that, like, you can't really tell the two apart. They don't really have distinct personalities or distinct charm about them. There's not a lot of depth to them either. Like, one of them, he has a girl, like, he has a girlfriend. That's about it when it comes to the depth that you get with that guy, because he was somebody that Ferrari kind of took under his wing temporarily because he came in and replaced this other racer of his who died in a tragic accident at during like a test run for the race. That whole scene, by the way, is very contrived in the way that it's written. Am I really supposed to believe that this is how it happened? That when the other driver crashes his car, there happened to be a series of events where Enzo told this other prospective racer, this other guy who wanted to join Ferrari's team, that I don't need any more racers. And then, like 5 minutes later, this other guy dies, and now there's an opening, and now Ferrari's like, all right, you're in. Like, am I supposed to really believe that's how it happened? It sounds completely and totally contrived and a bunch of Hollywood bullshit. Um, Maybe it is. I'm not a Ferrari historian, but it just sounds made up for drama. And then you get to the Millie Migula race itself, and that's like I think like almost 20 minutes or if not more than that of like the last half of the movie. And the race is thrilling and it definitely adds some much needed adrenaline to the snooze inducing bore fest that was the rest of the movie at this point because it's just focusing way too much on family drama over racing. But even that doesn't really save the film despite its shocking ending. Um, because the film just ends on a really weak note. Okay, you have this crazy, just awful, horrifying crash at the end that split the co-driver in half and crushed the other guy and killed a bunch of people in bloody, violent fashion who were just watching the race. But Ferrari's team wins, and there was a lot on the line because if his team didn't win, Ferrari was basically done because there had been a lot of losses already that were too much to take. So if his team lost and that accident happened, Ferrari would have been toast. And because nobody's gonna want to sponsor Ferrari or use Ferrari cars in the races because they've got the kiss of death in more ways than one. So his team won. His wife gives him this money to fight these battles against the media. And then he just takes his other son to see the grave of his dead son, and then the movie is over. So you're like, all of this, all this building up to the race, and it ends in genuinely grisly and surprising fashion. I will give it that. But then after that, like you're expecting more of a payoff to the whole thing between Laura and Enzo, and you don't really get that. It just happens with a text scroll at the end. And so it's just it's just a very unsatisfying conclusion and just an unsatisfying film for the most part. The dialogue isn't really that great a lot of the time either. There are some decent exchanges I will give the writer credit for. There's one with Enzo when he's talking to his racing team around a dinner table that's really well written. There's a couple other exchanges between Enzo and his wife Laura that are also great, especially at the end when she's trying to pick him up while he's down by giving him some tough love. But a lot of the dialogue is just very in one ear out the other. The The overall plot, like I said, is just very meandering and just drifting all over the road with not really a lot of cohesion or coherent thought most of the time. It's just family drama, family drama, family drama, little bit involving the Ferrari company and a little bit involving the Ferrari racers, and then the race itself with the Millie Migula. It's like, why didn't we focus more on the racers so you get to know them more? So then when the crash happens at the end, it's all the more tragic and upsetting. And the race has much more stakes to it. Like, you actually feel the stakes. It actually feels like it means something that they actually do win. Because the way that it's set up, it's like, why should I sympathize with Ferrari? Why should I care if his team wins? He's a cheater. He cheats on his wife. Doesn't seem like he's the best guy. So why should I give a shit whether or not he succeeds? Shouldn't I be rooting for his downfall? Like, that's the kind of vibe that I get. It's like, at least with Tony Soprano, like, he has a downfall. Ferrari, he just keeps going up after this. So it's like it's written in a way where it's like, oh, watch the downfall of this figure, this public figure, but not really. So yeah, it's just one of those movies where I just feel the approach to the story and the overall script was ultimately what really threw a wrench into everything. Like I said, if you expanded upon some of these other elements, like the racers and the race itself, and you made that more of a key focus when it comes to the film and less on the family drama, it would be a much better movie. Because there's only so much you can do with family drama to make that interesting, let alone that compelling. But that's just my take on the script. Now, the cast, I think the cast is fine. Adam Driver, initially I was a bit leery because I'm not a big fan of his, to be perfectly honest. And early on, his performance wasn't really grabbing me. But as the film went on, he he was able to convey a certain intensity that I think really paid off. And I know he's been criticized when it comes to his performance for being very detached and emotionless, but I think that's really Ferrari himself. That's just how Ferrari is. And I still felt there was a certain passion though at points. Like when he's talking about the race and he's talking about his racers and his racing team. Like, it really felt like that was the stuff that he cared about, not necessarily his wife anymore, or the scenes when he's, visiting his dead son, showing emotion there. And I thought it wasn't like an Oscar worthy performance by any means, but I thought it was fine. I thought it was, for the most part, definitely more middle of the road than magnificent, but it was sufficient enough. Penelope Cruz, I thought, despite the fact that her character is very one note, it's just a distressed and angry and upset wife in a loveless marriage who is dealing with the loss of a son. Um, it's a good performance, some very strong emotion conveyed by Penelope Cruz, and she also brings her own intensity to it, but it's not really the most memorable character. There's really not a lot to the character. I almost feel like Penelope Cruz and her performance is almost a little bit wasted here because she doesn't really have a ton to do except just be the frustrated wife in a loveless marriage. That's really all it is. Shailene Woodley is given even less to work with as Lena, the girl that Enzo is cheating on his wife with and is in love with. And she has decent chemistry with Adam Driver, and she's decent. She's adequate. The performance is fine, but it's not fantastic. I feel the same way for all the supporting cast members, like Sarah Gadon as Linda, Gabriel Leone as Alfonso de Portago, the young hotshot racer who replaces the guy who dies during the test run. Jack O'Connell as Peter Collins. Patrick Dempsey as Piero. I completely forgot it was Patrick Dempsey. That's a good job by Patrick, just completely blending in fully into that role of this Italian race car driver. RIP to his hair, though, because apparently he did go ahead and bleached his hair white, and because of that, he lost all of his hair. Um, so that was definitely quite the sacrifice for a role that honestly was kind of thankless in the end, if you really think about it, because there's not a lot of depth to it. Yeah, his character gets to win the race at the end, but there's no depth to that character whatsoever. So you lost all your hair for a character that most people are gonna forget about. Michelle Saviola as Carlo. He was fine. Lino Musella as Sergio. Domenico Fortunato as Adolfo. Ben Collins as Sterling Moss. Wyatt Colonel as Wolfgang Van Trips. Another thing, I didn't mention this when it comes to um, the um, the script. You have this other rival racing team, and there's really not much to them either. So there's not really a compelling side narrative with them either, which would have been interesting to have the two racing teams and have their whole goals and ambitions coincide or collide with one another throughout the movie. Then you also have Giuseppe Fontanese, who plays young Piero. I said Fiero. I thought they said Fiero, but it's Piero apparently. Um, but yeah, it's not a bad cast. It's just not a cast that's gonna like blow you away or win any awards. Feel the same way about the cinematography by Eric Messerschmidt. It's not magnificent. It's not marvelous, but it's above average. It's definitely very competent. There's definitely some skill that you see on camera, especially when it comes to like the night driving scenes or a lot of the scenes involving the racing. The editing by Pietro Scalia, I thought was pretty good, especially when it comes to the racing scenes. Those scenes are really where the editing shines the most. The music by Daniel Pemberton sounds a bit generic at points, but there are other moments where I feel that it was able to add an extra layer of emotion to certain scenes and provide a little bit extra impact or a little bit more for the rubber to meet the road, so to speak. It's a little bit more there, a little bit more power, a little bit of an extra gear for the film to get to. And the sound design in particular, I want to give a lot of credit to because that was phenomenal. If there's one thing about this movie that is consistently fantastic, it's the sound design. Especially when it comes to like the car and the engines of the cars revving and the gears shifting and all of that. Like that is some really good sound design. But yeah, it's like a film that's like 130 minutes, way too long. That's with the end credits. You take out the end credits, it's still too long. It's like 2 hours and 4 minutes, I think. And there's not enough there when it comes to the script or the plot to warrant this extended runtime. It's like Days of Our Lives most of the time, featuring Enzo Ferrari with some racing. That's really what Ferrari is. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Ferrari. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.